The first person who laughed when I dropped out of college was my cousin Bryce. The loud kind too. Head tilted back. Beer halfway spilling out of the bottle. Like I'd just announced I was joining the circus instead of leaving business school at 19 because my mother couldn't afford chemo anymore. "Man," he said between laughs, "Grandpa's gonna love this." That line stuck with me. Not because it hurt. Because Bryce genuinely thought he understood how the world worked. In our family, college degrees were treated like moral achievements. The more expensive the school, the more valuable the human. Meanwhile, I was driving home from Tulsa State every weekend anyway to help Mom with bills, prescriptions, appointments, insurance calls, all the glamorous stuff Hallmark movies skip. So one night I sat in my dorm room staring at overdue payment notices and realized something simple. Nobody was coming to save us. I packed 2 duffel bags and left before sunrise. My Aunt Darlene called me impulsive. My Uncle Vic said I was wasting my potential. Bryce started introducing me at family cookouts as the entrepreneur, complete with air quotes. Funny thing is, people only mock risk when they've never had to survive anything. Grandpa Otis never laughed though. That mattered. He just sat beside me on his porch one evening while cicadas screamed through the Oklahoma heat and asked quietly, "You got a plan?" "Sort of." "Good enough." That was his entire speech. See, Grandpa understood work differently than the rest of the family. He built a regional trucking supply business from a garage and 40 borrowed dollars back in the 70s. Didn't trust flashy people. Said men who talked too much about success usually rented it monthly. I worked for him after dropping out. Warehouse shifts first. Then inventory management. Then vendor negotiations. Nothing glamorous. A lot of forklifts and diesel smell and invoices at midnight. Bryce meanwhile became the family golden child because he graduated from some private business school in Arizona and learned how to say, "market synergy," without laughing. At family dinners, everyone listened when Bryce talked. When I talked, people nodded politely while checking their phones. Patterns like that teach you things. Mostly silence. Mom passed 2 years after I left school. That part changes a person permanently. Not dramatically either. Quietly. Like somebody rearranged your emotional furniture while you were asleep. At the funeral Bryce hugged me and whispered, "You can still go back to school, you know." I just nodded like, "Sure, whatever." Because grief exposes people fast. Some offer comfort. Others offer advice so they can feel superior while pretending to help. After Mom died, work became easier than thinking. I spent almost every day at Grandpa's company learning operations from the ground up. Dispatch systems. Freight contracts. Route optimization. Maintenance scheduling. Real business. Not LinkedIn vocabulary. Grandpa noticed everything. One winter morning he watched me rebuild a vendor crisis after 3 trucks broke down during an ice storm and said quietly, "You solve problems without announcing yourself." Coming from him, that felt bigger than praise. Meanwhile Bryce kept climbing socially instead of professionally. Fancy suits. Big networking events. Photos with people richer than him. He loved appearances. Loved them. By 26, he'd convinced most of the family he was basically running Grandpa's future empire despite barely understanding half the operational side. And honestly, Grandpa let him think that. That should have been my clue. The humiliation pattern got worse after Grandpa's health declined. Family gatherings suddenly became strategy meetings disguised as concern. Bryce would stand near the kitchen island talking about legacy transition, while I refilled Grandpa's oxygen machine in the other room. One Thanksgiving, my aunt actually said, "Well, Bryce has the education for leadership." While I was literally handling payroll corrections on my laptop beside the turkey. Yeah. That didn't sit right. But Grandpa stayed quiet. Always watching. Then came the night Bryce crossed the line. We were at Grandpa's house after a rough hospital visit. Everybody exhausted. Rain hitting the windows softly. Grandpa had fallen asleep in his recliner while family talked in low voices around the dining room. Bryce loosened his tie dramatically and said, "Look, we all know who Otis trusts with the company long term." Nobody answered. Then he looked directly at me. "You're dependable, Mason. But dependable and leadership aren't the same thing." That room got real still. I remember hearing the refrigerator hum. "That's it." My aunt stared into her wine glass. Uncle Vic suddenly became fascinated by napkins. And me? I smiled. Small smile. Controlled. Because people like Bryce always mistake silence for surrender. Grandpa opened his eyes from the recliner and looked straight at him. Didn't say a word. But something shifted. I felt it. 3 months later, Grandpa died peacefully at home early on a Sunday morning. The funeral packed half the county. Truckers. Mechanics. Warehouse guys. Old clients. People Bryce probably considered background characters. That mattered too. After the burial, the family gathered at the attorney's office downtown for the will reading. Big oak conference table. Coffee nobody touched. Everybody performing grief professionally. Bryce sat closest to the attorney. Naturally. Guy already looked promoted. I almost felt bad for him. Almost. The attorney, Miriam Vale, adjusted her glasses and began reading calmly through property allocations, charitable donations, and investment distributions. Then she paused. The ownership and controlling interest of Hollow Ridge Logistics, she continued, will transfer fully to my grandson Mason Avery. Silence. Real silence. Bryce blinked twice like his brain rejected the sentence physically. Miriam kept reading. Because leadership is earned through reliability under pressure, not presentation. Oh, Grandpa. Man landed his final punch from beyond the grave. My aunt inhaled sharply. Uncle Vic whispered, "No way." Bryce laughed first. Short nervous laugh. "There's gotta be more to that." "There is," Miriam replied calmly. Then she slid a sealed letter across the table. Grandpa's handwriting. Mine and Bryce's names on the front. I opened it carefully. Inside, Grandpa wrote about watching people over the years. Who stayed when situations got ugly. Who solved problems quietly. Who treated workers with dignity when nobody important was watching. Then came the line I'll never forget. A man who needs applause to work will abandon responsibility the moment nobody claps. Bryce's face lost color slowly while Miriam explained something even worse for him. Grandpa had structured leadership control around operational performance metrics I'd already been managing privately for years. Bryce never even knew. Turns out Grandpa trusted me long before anybody realized. That's when I knew, this was gonna get messy. And it did. Bryce challenged the will emotionally at first. Complained to family members. Suggested manipulation. Claimed Grandpa was confused near the end. Big mistake. Because nothing destroys fake authority faster than documented competence. The company board, made up mostly of longtime managers and regional partners, supported the transition immediately. They'd worked with me for years already. Bryce was the only person surprised. Within 6 months his consulting role quietly disappeared altogether after he tried overriding logistics systems he didn't understand. No dramatic firing. Just consequences. Funny how reality does that eventually. Last fall I visited Grandpa's old porch after closing a major expansion deal for the company. Cold air. Wind through cedar trees. Same creaking wooden steps. I sat there a while thinking about how everybody laughed when I dropped out at 19, like struggle automatically meant failure. But Grandpa had seen something the rest missed. Some people build resumes. Some people build endurance. Only one of those survives when life gets heavy.